we are here today for the Utah PTA Pulse podcast. My name is Corey Fairholm. I am the immediate past president and one of the hosts for the Pulse podcast. And Angelee.
I'm Angelee Aedo, the Vice President of Advocacy.
And today our guest is Yvonne Johnson, the National PTA President.
We're so lucky.
Yes. So thank you so much for joining us today, Yvonne.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for taking the time. We know it's like a different time change and all that. So thank you for being here. So Angelee has an icebreaker. So go ahead, Angelee.
Well, I thought today, since we're interviewing Yvonne and not a lot of people know her, I thought it would be really fun for all of us to answer what got us started in PTA. So I can go first. How about that?
Okay.
So I started in PTA when my oldest was in second grade. In California, we had PTOs, and I always wanted to go to the meetings, but I was having babies. And then we moved to Utah, and all the ladies in the neighborhood went to PTA meetings, and I was like, I better go to that. Like, I think I'm gonna find friends there. And I guess like the rest is history, like you start because you want friends or you want to go to school with your kid, and then it becomes more of a passion and you realize the importance of PTA. But I still love all the friends I've made from PTA for sure.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yvonne, you want to go?
Sure. So I got involved in PTA a little different than most people. And that same thing, you make all these wonderful friends. I have friends that I have for life that I've been friends with for over, I don't know, almost 45 years through PTA. So I love that you said that, you sort of create this, I always call it the PTA family. But I got involved in PTA because I'm Jewish and I moved to Delaware, and I came from in Long Island where there was a synagogue on every street corner. And I kept my son home from school in kindergarten for a Jewish holiday, Rosh Hashanah, which is a very religious holiday. And he came home the next day with an unexcused absence. And I'm like, what is this? So I went to the school. First, I called the school and they wouldn't talk to me. So I marched over to that school and I said, I don't understand. I kept him home. We went to synagogue. Do you need proof? Blah, blah. And the school secretary, and we all know school secretaries know everything. She said, you should get that changed. And I said, well, how am I going to do that? And she said, get involved in the PTA. They'll teach you how to do that. And I thought, my family, my parents, my sister, everybody always was, they were involved in PTA. It was always about supporting the school, raising money, that kind of thing. It was not this. So I was really confused, but I started to go to the meetings. I got involved and I learned how to advocate. And to this day, first it became an excused absence. I learned how to build coalition partners, and now it's a day off. So I found my voice really early as an advocate, and that is how I became so passionate about PTA. So that's my story.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right there. That is an example of how parents can get involved and make a difference and make
Totally.
changes. Yeah. Yeah. And me, I'm like you guys, I got involved because I wanted to be involved with my kids and go to school with them. My daughter went to school and I'm like, oh, I'm going with you because I need to know the principal and the teachers and I want to get involved. And then all of a sudden they're like, so do you want to be involved in PTA? I'm like, yes. You want to be the president? Well, sure.
Why not?
So yes, and I think that's how we all get involved, is being asked and making a difference for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows them that their voice counts. Both my children are now 40 and 31. My daughter's an immigration attorney, and they're both advocates. Like, they know how to advocate for themselves and stand up for themselves. And I think it's because they were raised in a house where I taught them and I led by example that your voice matters. You might not all agree. You need to be respectful, but you can't give up in things that you believe in. You have to stay the course. And obviously, I set this example. Even my grandson now is a little bit of an advocate. We had a interesting Hanukkah celebration the other night, and he was asking me about our heritage. He was like a school assignment, and he was like, well, all of these things happen, and we can't let that happen. And I'm like, oh, this is music to my ear as a 10-year-old, and he's already an advocate. So,
And that's true. I mean, it's such a proud mom moment when you see
yeah,
your kids voting. Or my son went up to the Capitol to, be a part of advocacy for something that affected his job. And I'm like, oh my goodness, they listened. They saw my example, even though they
that's
complained,
right.
right?
Uh-huh, totally.
Yeah, they complain, Mom, why are you involved? And then they're doing that. So, well, thank you. Can you give us like just a quick overview of the National PTA's mission and how advocacy fits into that mission?
Absolutely. So our mission is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. And Corey, there is no meeting that I have. And as president, I ask my committees to do this. We start everything with the mission, our board meetings, any kind of a meeting. When I bring all the state president and president-elects to get everybody, because it keeps us grounded in what we should be focusing on, and that is advocating for children. So it connects everything. The more we speak our voices, the more powerful it is. You know, it for PTA, advocacy is a central pillar of everything we do at every single level. It doesn't matter if it's national PTA, if it's a council, a region, a local. PTA is important, and we've always been an ardent advocate for bettering the lives of every child because we know we can't only focus on our own children, right? We get involved because of our own children, which we just shared here today, right? But we care for other people's children because the lives of our own children, our grandchildren, our nieces, our nephews, or, whoever you're advocating for will be affected by contact with other kids. And that is why when we walk into a school and we see that there's not something right, we PTA, it's like in our blood that we want to speak up for them and do what's right for every child. And it's why we advocate for every child in our nation. And when you help one child, you are helping all the children in all the school communities and potentially across your state and the nation.
And that's true. I mean, when I started, it was just for my own kids. But then when you join, you realize how important it is to make a difference for every single child and for their future so that they
Yeah,
can have great opportunities. And when we fight for one, we're fighting for all, right? And we want to make sure
that's
we're making a difference. So
well said.
thank you. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, we're done. So good.
So why do you think advocacy is such the central pillar of PTA at every level?
So we are louder and stronger together. It's our collective voices. This is why membership is so important because the more members we have, the more powerful our collective voice is that when we go to decision makers, whether it's at the local level when you're advocating to a school board, or you're advocating to the superintendent, or you're going to your state capital and you're advocating at the state legislature, or when you go to Capitol Hill in DC, or you contact your member of Congress, the more members and the louder and stronger our voices are if we have more members. And that's why membership is so important. It gives our association its power at every level, whether it's local all the way up to the national PTA.
And that's so true because many parents are like, I don't want to join PTA because I have to volunteer. But when they realize that it is a collective voice and we are powerful as one collective voice, many of us together, I think that makes the biggest difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's good. And that's why it is important to join PTA and have that membership because people are like, well, I don't want to be a member of national. No, because we also have that collective voice at the national level as well.
Right.
And
Because when you join, regardless of what level you're joining at, if you join at a local, or you join at the state, or you join at national, you are still part of the national organization. You are still we are a federated organization, which means that any position that we have at national becomes the position of every other um, constituent association, all the way down to the local. But I'm a big believer in grassroots advocacy, where it starts at the local, and that's why local member people, we want people to volunteer. We want people to be involved in their local units and advocating at the local space. But at the end of the day, if they don't have the time to volunteer, it's important to understand the why of PTA. And the biggest why is that we advocate for every child in our nation. And that's, I always say, have your elevator speech, because I'm always in elevators because I travel a lot. And I have my badge on. It says, Yvonne Johnson, National PTA President. And people was like, is that the Physical Therapy Association? And I say, what in the world? PTA is a household name. How do you not know what PTA is? And then I go into my elevator speech about why they should join. And by the time the elevator ride is over, I usually have handed them a QR code to join.
And that's
Because you know
perfect.
why people don't join PTA, Corey? Because they're not asked. That's the number one reason people don't join, because they're not
Totally.
asked.
And they're not at and you're right, and people are afraid to ask, because you know why, because I'm afraid of being rejected, all right, or saying,
Yeah.
someone's going to tell me no. But if they're asked to say, hey, join PTA, make a difference, then that right there
Mm.
is, I mean, that's a
Powerful.
good start. Yeah, that's totally powerful.
Well, and I think too, like I was thinking of a membership campaign that one of my friends did last year. It was in February, and she was like, I don't think I'm gonna get very many members. And I was like, anything, like even if you just get two, like whatever your efforts were worth it. But she sent home this like really heartfelt letter about PTA, and she had like 30 more people join.
That's
I
wonderful.
was like, "This was amazing," and she just was
Yeah,
like, she's like, "I think people just they didn't understand," you know?
exactly.
And, like, I always tell people, I mean, I've ran many membership campaigns, and I always tell people, like, "Yeah, we'd love for you to volunteer, we totally would, but, like, time and a season for everything, and if your time is not to volunteer, like, I want you to realize the importance of PTA and why it's important to be a member." And that often, like, when you tell people that, they're willing to join even though they can't volunteer, or they're scared to volunteer, or they're just like whatever. And I'm also like, you fund all these activities as well, that your children
Hmm.
could participate in, and I think that is helpful on all the parts.
I also think that sometimes people have a lot going on in their lives and they hear PTA, I don't have time to volunteer. I can't work the dances and I can't fundraise and everything. But when you explain to them, your membership goes towards a collective voice that makes a difference for every child. And you might not be affected by this now, but you could be affected by this one day. So I know recently in your state, there was a division of your districts. They were realigned or something like this, right? So I know that that was very heavily in parents were very engaged and involved in that, and I know PTA was involved, and that was a time where the people that were involved might not have looked at PTA as a resource, but it was a resource for this. So you never know when this resource is going to be helpful to you. And as a member, you get a vote and you get a say. And so I try to always relate it to something that could be in, that the person is going to personally, because people usually do things that are good for themselves, right? Not everybody has the mindset that we're helping every child in our nation, but if that's a good way to get people to join. Recently, in my state of Delaware, we had a convention, and there's this thing actually, they're voting on it this evening, a very big change to how they're realigning districts here. So similar to what you guys went through. And parents were really, they saw this handout and they came up. I had just done an advocacy presentation. Rose and I did it together. And this woman was so upset. She's like, I had no idea this was going on. And I said to her, when was the last time you went to a school board meeting? I've never been to a school board meeting, she said. I said, this is what I was trying to say in the workshop, that we have to pay attention. Now you can go to a school board meeting virtually. You don't have to go in person, although it's good to go in person. You got to be engaged. And your school board, I know for a fact, has been discussing this. And then I gave her some examples. And she really mobilized parents, and they had over, I think, 500 people go in person about this issue to their school board meeting last 2 weeks ago. So there's always a time where PTA is going to be able to help a family, to help a kid, to help a teacher. There's always going to be a time. So it's a very it's you join PTA because you're making a difference, but literally every member that joins goes towards that collective voice that makes a difference for every child in our nation.
And we find that we're more powerful when we're just, if it was just me by myself, I couldn't make a difference. But when there is several of us, many of us, thousands of us, we can make a bigger difference and be able to have that stronger
Mhm.
collective voice.
Yeah.
And I think that's why and I mean Utah PTA celebrated 100 years this year, and
Congratulations.
thank you. I mean, it's awesome,
It
right?
really is.
It is.
And national PTA is what, 129, 130?
We'll be 129 at the convention where I'm done being president.
And see, and that's amazing. Right there, that proves that PTA has a
Mm-mm.
successful structure and that we have been successful in advocating for these kids for 129 years.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
definitely. And a lot of people are afraid of advocacy. Like I've seen that too, where people are
yeah.
scared to open and I always say you're probably already advocating, you don't even know it. So if you are on the car line, right, and you hear some parents talking about something and then you go and share it with the principal, that's advocating. When you go to a PTA meeting and you tell families about an issue that you hear that might be going on in your school district, that is advocating. When you go to a school board meeting and you speak in public comment, that's advocating. So mostly, if you're a parent that's involved, even a little bit, you're probably already advocating. So you're already doing these things. And all effective advocacy is just raising your voice and taking action to achieve change. It's not, people think it's, you know, you have to pick it and it's none of that. You really advocacy can be communicating. So you could be sending out a letter or, a newsletter and just giving information or calling people or texting people or posting something on social media. You do have to be careful with social media, but anytime you're meeting with any decision maker, whether it's a principal, assistant principal, a teacher, and you're utilizing your resources like social media and speaking about an issue, that's advocacy. So they're probably already advocating and don't even realize it.
Well, even just going to parent teacher conferences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sitting down
Right.
with the teacher or asking the teacher, why isn't my son doing very well at school? That's advocating. And so, I mean, as a parent, that's what we've been doing for years and years, right? And so, PTA is just that one more step to advocate for those concerns that we might have in our state and national, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And what makes our work really unique are the stories that we share. Because a
Yeah.
decision maker isn't going to remember every statistic, every data point. They're just not. But they remember how PTA made them feel because you're coming in and you're telling them a personal story. You're telling them a story about something that happened in your community. That's what resonates with them. I once had a state senator tell me, this is many years ago. He said, I get one email, I respond. When I get three, I'm thinking, I wonder what's going on. When I get 10, I think there's 100 people behind it. So never underestimate. I have a saying. I know you've heard it before, Corey. Never underestimate the power of a parent's voice. Your voice counts as a parent, and you should not underestimate the power that comes with it. We represent every corner of our nation. It doesn't matter. Even the Department of Defense schools have PTAs, and we have authentic stories, and that's what makes us strong and keeps us strong together because we're a family, and that's a very unique thing. And that I know you mentioned PTO, which is not anything to do with PTA. It is a parent group, so we don't like to say we want parents to be engaged regardless. But PTO doesn't have advocacy. They're more supporting the school, raising the money, doing the events, which is still very important. And I don't want to belittle that. But PTA has a reputation of we are the largest child advocacy association, and we were founded in 1897 on advocacy because our founders said we're worried about child labor laws. We're going to bring some people to the Capitol. They thought maybe 100 people would show up, and 2,000 people showed up. That is how PTA started. So we were founded on advocacy, and that's what gives us our legacy and gives us our worth and why we're still here 129 years later.
And that's totally powerful right there. That example right there is powerful, that we could get 2,000 people there to fight and make a difference. And that's what I think we've been doing for national 129 years, and Utah
Yeah,
PTA 100. And
it's great.
that's strong. And that's what
Yeah,
we've been doing to make a big difference. So that's amazing. And I love what you said about the personal stories.
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
when we meet with legislators, it's those personal stories that we share, and that's what they listen to. And I've seen it when we have sat down at the National PTA LegCon and we meet with our legislators, we tell them those personal stories and they listen. And that makes a
exactly.
difference.
You know, a local leader doesn't have to be an expert on any issue. Um, but you do, as a local leader, your expertise is your story. It's what you learned from your own experiences, and your voice is incredibly important. And you should feel empowered to advocate on issues that are important to children and families in your school community. So when you have success with your own child, for example, and you can share that with others, and then they're successful. You've created this advocacy campaign that has been successful, and a decision maker that resonates with them, that they remember those stories.
They do. And then when they have to make that decision, they go, "Oh, I remember a story that made an impact, and this is why I'm voting that way."
You should also, I would say, if anyone's listening to this, that I would tell local leaders they should ask their school boards and their local representatives and state senators to join PTA, because they're a part. I bet you if you ask, they wouldn't say no, because they want to be part of what's happening in the schools. And this is a great way to do that, by showing being part of that collective voice, but also by showing support. So ask those legislators to join PTA.
I've never had one turn me down. So
I've
Yeah,
been trying to think.
exactly.
I don't think they've ever turned us down, but we just need to be brave and ask.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And what for a local leader who will be listening to this, what's some of your an advice that you might have about advocacy and how to get involved, and what would you give them as some advice for a local leader who's
So
maybe just starting in PTA?
yeah, so sometimes local leaders feel advocacy is overwhelming, which I already mentioned. They think it's reserved for the experts, and sometimes they feel hesitant, but they shouldn't let the idea of not being an expert keep them from advocating, because nobody is a perfect expert. And as you do it, you become more of an expert. Your voice, regardless of how much experience you have, is still very powerful. And you should feel empowered to advocate on issues that are important to children and families in your school community. And all you have to do to be an expert on to advocate is to show your story. That is literally the way you become an expert. PTA is here to help you be that expert and help support you with all the data and research you need, because we have position statements, resolutions, our government affairs work. We have a public policy priorities. It's all on our website at pta.org/advocacy. There's an advocacy toolkit. There's position papers. There's letters to decision makers. There's white papers. It is chock full of a plethora of resources that is available to any local leader if they want to advocate, taking it down to the simplest way to advocate, because we know that now I didn't start out like this. Like I shared when we first started, I started out with advocacy, but I didn't know what to do. And how I learned was going to a PTA meeting over and over again, listening to them and learning the importance of coalition partners. Trust me, if a local leader's having a problem, there's another local leader that's having the same problem. And when you come together and you're all sharing your similar worries or concerns, that's how you become experts. You share your ideas and then you bring them to the decision makers. Also, decision makers give you feedback. And you should, obviously, you're not going to let them talk you out of what you believe in, but sometimes they'll say, if you do this, you can get this. And it's important to listen so that you hear what they have to say.
And that's true. I mean, a lot of times parents are like, they think they're all by themselves, but when they like go to a PTA meeting and are part of that discussion, then they're saying, "Oh, you're suffering the same way I am, or you have this concern too. Let's pull together." And they can also look at different ways of dealing with that, that issue, and working together to find a solution. And a lot of
Definitely.
times if they can work together, there is a solution that they can come to, or talk to a legislator that, or
Mhm.
a community member or a mayor or city council that can help solve those issues.
Right. Sometimes you have to know when to compromise.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing to, we have 5 values in PTA: collaboration, respect, diversity, accountability, and commitment. These 5 values drive the work that we do. And if you stick to those 5 values and our mission, it will not steer you wrong, because it is really how you're going to put yourself, so to speak, on the map. We all start somewhere and we can all get to that other place. It's not that difficult. And you'll be shocked to see how many other people, once you start putting something on social media or sending out a newsletter or communicating with your community, to find out how many other people are concerned about this same issue. And that's how you mobilize people to come together on an issue.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
I love it. That's awesome.
Well, I have one more question.
Okay.
Okay.
Doesn't have anything to do with advocacy.
Okay. Ask away.
I am just curious, like, how you got to where you are now. Like, I'm sure when you joined PTA, you weren't like, I think one day I'm going to be the national PTA president.
No,
Maybe
that
you
is
did. I
not what
don't
happened at all.
know.
Definitely not. So, I mentioned how I got involved, and then I became this advocate, which, you know, I think, my parents were older parents. So my mother had me when she was 40. So I remember them being involved in PTA, and I know my dad was a big advocate for things in the community. He always taught us to be, the Jewish religion is a teaching religion, and we always invited people from, all other different cultures to share our holidays, and we would go and share their holidays. And I taught my children that too. I would go to their schools and make latkes on Hanukkah and talk about the Seder on Passover and teach the children in the classrooms the different things. And that's how I became so involved in the schools. Same as you, I wanted to be there for my kids. I mean, my daughter would say when I got installed as National PTA President, part of her speech was, I was in high school and I thought you'd be done. Then I went to college and I thought you'd be done. And you're still, now you're here. And she did make me sign a contract. She wouldn't go to University of Delaware unless I signed a contract that I wouldn't start a PTA at the University of Delaware. So
My kids say the same thing.
she said, I mean,
But
she
don't
lived on
come.
campus, but she was like, and I was so behaved, and I was the definition of helicopter mom, trust me. And so anyway, so then, somebody said you should, I became the local unit president as my time went on. Then someone's like, you should join the state PTA. I'm like, what? I didn't even know there was a state PTA. Like, I really didn't until I became a local leader. Then I had to, go to the trainings. And then they asked me to be on the board as an advocacy. First, I was a region vice president, then I was advocacy, and then I became the state president. But when I got on the board in 2006, in 2009, I was invited to go to the National PTA Convention in Fort Lauderdale, and I went to the convention, and I mean, in these days we had 3,000 people go to it. I was so taken in by the resolutions and the bylaws and all the business. And I'm like, I want to be a part of this one day. So when I became a state president, I did the natural thing. When I was done, I applied for a national PTA committee, and I was put on field service for national PTA. And then I ran for the board of directors. Then I ran for VP of advocacy. And while I was VP of advocacy, people were like, you're going to run for president-elect. I said, you're on drugs. No way am I doing that, right? I am not doing that. You have to. You have to. And so I put my name in and I got elected. And when I got elected, we had changed the bylaws from 2-year terms to 3-year terms. So I served president-elect for 2 and president for 3. As a matter of fact, the night I got elected as president-elect, we went out to celebrate dinner, and one of the local principals had seen that I know everybody. It's always tiny. Everybody knows me. I know them. And she had sent champagne over to the table. And she's like, which was so nice. And her husband came up and said, to the next 5 years. And my husband's like, hold on, I thought it was 4 years. My
Surprise!
Bill, who's our president-elect, has to do 6 years. I only had to do 5. 3 years is a long time to be president. It's a long time. But I mean, I love it and I'm very dedicated to it. I love the advocacy. I love the work we do. I love talking to local leaders. I love going to conventions. I love that. It's the drama I don't love so much.
I
It
think
can
we
be
all agree on
overwhelming. Yeah, exactly. But that's my path. But not everyone takes that path. Some people don't become a state president, they go right to the national level. Some people stop as a state president. So I think it just depends upon, I think also opportunity that comes with your growth as a leader. That also has a lot to do with it. Because if the circumstances are right, then it happens. If it's not, you might have to wait and, you know, but that's how I got into this position.
I love it.
You do a fabulous job. I know that.
Oh, thank you.
No, she has been a great president. And when I was serving as president for Utah PTA, I called Yvonne many times for advice, and the meetings that she leads are very inspirational. And so you do a
Thank you.
wonderful job. So thank you for spending time. I know you're really busy and you're in between meetings, and I know out in Delaware it's snowing. So
Well, it was snowing. Now
it
it's
was
stopped.
snowing.
Now it's just freezing.
And now it's just freezing cold. So, but thank you so much for coming tonight and doing this podcast with us and for
It
the
was
great
fun.
advice.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, we are so excited that you
Yes.
were willing to come and talk with us and talk to the local leaders. So thank you so
Yeah.
much.
I hope I see lots of local leaders at your convention this year because
Yes.
I will be there and I'm so excited. I've always wanted to go to Utah's convention, so I am super excited and I hope I see lots of local leaders because I love to meet everybody and talk to them. So if this is an advertisement for that, make sure you register for their convention.
No, that's
Always.
awesome because it's going to air
Always.
at the beginning of next year. So perfect. It will be awesome. So we're excited to have you come to our convention. And so thank you so much for
Of course.
coming.
I hope you have an amazing holiday.
Yes, you too. One last thing,
Thank you.
Yvonne. One thing we do is we dance at the end.